Thanks for coming over. This talk is about orchestrating Kubernetes deployments and cluster operations on top of any cloud. So I'm Dimitris. I'm CTO and co-founder of Mist.io, which is a cloud management platform. It allows you to manage heterogeneous infrastructures from a unified interface, a unified GUI, API, and CLI. We started developing it to scratch our own needs, which worked pretty well so far. So we ended up with a completely different set of problems. Now we run a software as a service and an on-prem deployments with actual customers. But how do we scale it seamlessly? How do we deploy new versions with minimal effort, and how do we roll back when we need to? How do we break things apart and move towards microservices architecture? So the first approach, we thought we could simply use Docker. We've been using Docker for testing and development. So the next logical step was to break our components apart into containers. This worked really great. But then we realized that orchestrating all the different containers and propagating configuration changes was not at all trivial. So we ended up having to write a bunch of custom orchestration scripts, and complexity was increasing exponentially. So then we decided to try out Kubernetes. It works like a charm for orchestrating containers. It can scale our services, help automate deployments and rollbacks, and it's really amazing. But once again, that brings a whole new set of problems. Now we have to deploy Kubernetes clusters and scale them or heal them. And we want to be able to do that on top of any cloud because we don't want to lock ourselves into a single vendor, and also because we want to be able to do on-prem deployments on OpenStack and bare metal. Also, we discovered that Kubernetes is not always the ideal solution, especially when it comes to stateful services. And we ended up managing our MongoDB and Graphite clusters independently. And we also wanted to orchestrate those. So we decided to try out and use and solve these problems with Cloudify. It's an excellent orchestration platform. It can handle every use case we can think of. It's not a simple tool, but once you get the hang of it, the complexity is really manageable. However, orchestrating also includes provisioning resources, which we need to do on top of any cloud. Cloudify supports that through custom vendor plugins. So the problem with that is that we had to write specific separate blueprints, one for each cloud that we wanted to support. So we decided to look inside into ourselves for a solution. I mean, we've been building a platform that can provision resources on top of any cloud. So why don't we use that? We wrote a Mist.io Cloudify plugin, which worked really great. And now we have a single Cloudify blueprint that can deploy Kubernetes on any cloud, on OpenStack, on EC2, and any cloud that is supported by Mist.io. Actually, we took an extra step. We did more than just develop a Cloudify plugin. We integrated Cloudify into the Mist.io platform. This way, we can provide a slick user interface and CLI for all your orchestration needs. So I'll try to show it a bit to you. I hope it all goes well. I will not do any actual cluster deployments right now because that takes some time. Okay, so this is the existing Mist.io platform. It's You can add your clouds just by entering your credentials, and then you can see the inventory of your machines, images, networks, etc. You get to monitor your machines, configure rules, alerts, automation, have access to the command shell through the web, which also works great from any device. The new version of the Mist.io UI, which is about to be released in a few weeks, also includes the support for Cloudify blueprints. You simply add a blueprint by the URL, and then, so this is the blueprint we developed for deploying Kubernetes. It will extract all the inputs and the available workflows. And I can easily create stacks using this template just by putting some inputs. And this is exactly what I did here. So I deployed, I used this blueprint, the Kubernetes blueprint, to deploy Kubernetes on AC2 in Seoul and on an OpenStack installation that we maintain. So as you can see, these are the resources of this Kubernetes cluster. I can actually prove it to you that it's a real Kubernetes cluster. Yeah, this is the IP. It has these two nodes. I can execute all the available workflows, like upscale the cluster, scale down, uninstall, and the default workflow supported by Cloudify, like heal and install and install. And this is the exact same, we use the exact same template to deploy Kubernetes on OpenStack, again with one master, one worker, and this is the SSH key that we used. Also, Mist.io can help you delegate access to those resources, to create teams and assign policies to those teams. So only specific teams can have access to specific blueprints, specific workflows. So I will go back to the slides. What do we get out of this? We can run any blueprint through the web without any local setup. Actually, the workflows themselves, they are executed inside throwaway Docker containers. I can spin up a new cluster just with a few clicks, and I can scale the cluster just with a single command, again with a few clicks. The next steps we are working on is to be able to trigger workflows based on monitoring events. So for example, when the average load on your cluster, it goes over some threshold, Mist.io can execute the scale-up workflow on your cluster and provision a new worker node and add it to your Kubernetes cluster. Or you will be able to schedule workflows like back up all your different services, all your different nodes on specific times. And then we want to look into cross-cloud clusters. This is a project nicknamed Kubernetes. This poses more challenges because of network latency and other limitations. So this is currently available in a private beta. It will be released for general availability early July. You can request beta access right now, and so we will soon also release it as a fully open source. So if you have any questions, I'd love to hear it. Yeah. Right now we do not have any, but we are planning to add support for uh, managing volumes and assigning them to clusters. Um, I can actually try to set up a new cluster right now, since we have enough time. I'll just need to copy paste some inputs. So my stack is being created. I can show you also the oh, should be able to see the container that's running the operation. This is it in our Swarm cluster. Not from here. Oops. Sorry, excuse me. So as you can see, these are the logs of the container that's using Cloudify to initialize the environment, and now it's provisioning the machines. You can see in the mist.io logs, sorry, here. I just created the stack here. This is the request. It started with creating a machine, the master machine. Once this is finished, it will run the initialization scripts on the master node. Then it will provision the worker node, configure that too, and then it will be ready. This currently takes about 15 to 20 minutes on EC2, depending on your provider. It can take longer or less. So this is a very much work in progress, but soon enough it will be polished and available for any cloud. Any other questions? Yep.
Which scenario do I want to use this.io, or in which scenarios do I want to use just Kubernetes on top of OpenStack?
You can use mist.io to simplify the deployment of Kubernetes and managing the operations on Kubernetes, and to have the same exact setup easily replicated on EC2, on Azure, on any other cloud. It's an extra layer to simplify and to give you a unified management experience. Yes, please. Exactly. You just change the inputs, and you can configure these inputs through a form where you can just select the cloud. I can select either EC2 Ireland or Seoul, DigitalOcean, any of the clouds that I've added to my to my account here. I'm not really familiar with Spinnaker at this. I've seen it some time ago. I'm not up to date with what it does right now.
Spinnaker is a project, open source project that they provided, and this is an actual as a service solution.
Yeah, it's also open source, mostly apart from the role-based access. It's also open source, so you can install it on-prem. And there's also a CLI you can use and a unified API to provision resources on any cloud. All right, thank you very much. Thanks for coming here.